We are back talking about one of my favorite topics, which is bridges that don't work so well. Multichain, that bridge company that about a month ago had to come clean with the uncomfortable confirmation that its CEO is nowhere to be seen, apparently is losing a lot of money, and no one's really quite sure why. Yesterday, 3 different bridging contracts, one for Fantom, one for Moonriver, and one for Dogechain, started losing in total over $120 million of various cryptocurrencies in what looks like an exploit, but no one's really quite sure. The Multichain company, the Multichain Twitter account, came forward yesterday and said, yeah, we're not sure what's happening with this money. It's leaving our access, and we don't know why. Stay tuned. And by the way, maybe don't use multi-chain bridges for the time being. So all this to me just speaks to a company that really has no idea what is going on, and is very concerning because bridges, as we all have learned, are very important to the crypto ecosystem in moving tokens from one chain to another. You have to trust in the bridge to feel certain that your tokens will have value. And if the bridges aren't able to keep the tokens in check, let alone a handle on their own understanding of the situation, like, what are we to do when the second biggest bridging company is having issues like this? Jen, I'll start with you. What do you think of all this?
What are we to do? What I haven't heard greater words when talking about bridges, Danny. So we hear so many attacks, hacks, vulnerabilities when we talk about bridges. So when I saw the headline, I was like, oh, okay, another bridge exploit. But then when we get into the story, there are so many little tidbits that make this one extra interesting to me. So you mentioned the CEO went AWOL. No one knows what happened to the CEO. And there's some speculation that the executive team was arrested in China. Then you had, like, last month, there were a bunch of technical issues and the team kind of was really quiet, not saying much about what was going on. And now we have this hack and they're out there saying, actually stop using the product. We still don't know what's going on. It just is all seeming very strange, and I don't know what to make of it, but I think it just highlights the fact that we're still so, I'm going to say it, still so early. We're still so early. And there are so many things to figure out in individual ecosystems. And when you add this extra capability to connect those ecosystems together to make things more interoperable, of course, there are going to be vulnerabilities like this. Maybe not this specific situation, but yeah, I think that's what it highlights for me. Will, what do you think? Do you have more sense to make of the story?
I like to think so, but possibly not. We'll find out in a second. You guys give me a rating. To Danny's question, what are we to do if bridges don't work? Well, I don't know, Danny. Like, sort of the purpose of crypto is like scamming people, right? And bridges incentivize that in a really good way. So like we can just continue to roll out these bridges that don't work and everyone can get scammed that way. I would love to see some charts of like the amount of crypto stolen from wallets, from hot wallets, from exchanges, and then against bridges, because I think bridges would be up there in the top. They'd probably be one of the highest amount of scams, because at the end of the day, these are just multi-sigs more or less. And it just means that a few developers or possibly a few smart contracts are running these things and people can break into them. Bridges are not what a lot of people think they are. They're not this trustless two-way peg where assets can flow back and forth. They are very much so escrowed accounts that have the ability to lock in funds and then release funds on the other side. But those funds are not the same. They're not necessarily always fungible. Take WBTC, for example, Wrap Bitcoin. Basically, how Wrap Bitcoin works is you give Bitcoin to BitGo, and then they issue WBTC, which is an Ethereum token version of it. And that's sort of a bridge. It's not as complex as the other ones, but it does allow you to bridge from the Bitcoin ecosystem to the Ethereum ecosystem using a centralized entity in between. And if that centralized entity is ever caught in some sort of issue, whether that be legal, political, or even on the developer front with illegal activity, well, you're going to have a bad time. Now, one thing to this, I think, is possibly a good note, is most of the tokens here that have been stolen or missing are actually funds that could likely be frozen. And that would include a lot of USDC and WBTC. So if the teams or the DAOs behind this do contact those entities, they might be able to freeze funds. They might also just be able to put those funds on a blacklist and have new funds issued. Because at the end of the day, as a bridging token, the real assets do reside somewhere else, and you might be able to get out of this in a better fashion than it looks like on paper as of now. But it's not looking good. Danny?
No, it is not looking good. And I will say, anytime you have a bridge, you almost certainly have a centralized entity behind it. And that's one point of failure. The other point of failure is the bridge might break, or someone might steal from it and take the assets. So those are two really important things to keep in mind when using a bridge. And also, to me, it stands to reason that there's actually a better way of doing this, doing bridges. Like if you're going to accept that a centralized entity has to somewhere in the mix when moving assets between chains, USDC and Circle have actually put forward a pretty good solution. So any ecosystem that has native USDC, Circle is progressively rolling out this new type of bridge that will, when you put the USDC in on one side, it will destroy that USDC and then reissue new USDC on the other side. So that takes away entirely any risk of these funds being locked up in an escrow where they may be susceptible to a hack or a theft, because they're just going away and then being recreated somewhere else. Now, this is only possible because Circle is a centralized entity, and this is a centralized stable coin that is under its purview, but it is a much safer bridging solution when you think about all these $100 million hacks that we see over and over and over again in crypto.
I think so as well.
Maybe we'll have the centralized bridging solutions for all the risk-averse people and the decentralized solutions for the riskier ones.
Well, that's the funny thing, right? The decentralized option is the one that is inherently centralized. There's not really any sort of sidechain solution out there that functionally works, besides maybe some of these rollups that are being built on. And even those, once you get to the L2, you have like a sequencer problem where that's also a centralized entity. So a lot of work to be done. Jen, I know we make fun of you for saying it's early days, but it is early days when it comes to L2s and bridging.
I know, you guys always make fun of me, but I'm not always saying things that are totally out there.
It's just a little cringy. It's just a little cringy.
Sometimes. Yeah, got to bring the cringe to the show.
It's true.
Okay.
It's true.
All right.